Hi, I'm Richie Kotzen, and I'm here in the Camden Underworld in London, and I'm giving you my rig tour for Total Guitar. First off is the guitar that I play. It's my signature model Telecaster, and it's been around for quite some time. The original one came out in Japan in 1996, and now it is available throughout the world. And a couple of unique things on the guitar. First of all, the neck. It's a thicker neck than your average Telecaster. Spent a lot of time getting the dimensions that I wanted for the neck, something that I felt fit my hand, and we settled on this. Large frets, I think they're called 6100s. It's a maple neck, and if you look up here, you'll notice a drop detuner. More common on a bass guitar, but I wanted one on here. And gold hardware. As far as the body, there's a slight contour here that is normally not on a Telecaster. We added that. And on the back, you notice there's comfort cut, more like a Strat type thing. But we put it on the Tele because it just makes it more comfortable to play. And as far as the wood, it's a flame top and a swamp ash back. And the electronics, pretty simple. Bridge, middle, neck. Pickups are made by DiMarzio. So in the neck you have the Twang King. And in the bridge you have the Chopper T. It's a higher output pickup than a standard Telecaster pickup, but it's not nearly as high output as some of the humbuckers that you see in other guitars. So it's somewhere in the middle. Allows me to still get a Telecaster sound when I roll the volume down. When I turn the volume up, it's a little more aggressive than the average Telecaster. The other thing you'll notice on here, tone knob actually is not a tone knob. It's a series parallel switch for the middle position. And so that gives you an extra tonality. And then the other two things that are aftermarket on the guitar, don't come with the guitar, is this disc, this white disc. That is a guitar tuner. So if I flick this switch here, you'll see that light up. And so I can check my tuning. It mutes the output. It's very convenient if I'm in the dressing room or even on stage in between songs. I can check my tuning very quickly. It's very accurate. And that's it. That's my guitar. All right, so for the guitar amp, I'm using, obviously, a Marshall. I use the 100-watt Plexi SLP. That's what I'm using now. Normally, when I'm on my own gear, this is rented gear, I use the Marshall HW, which is a 100-watt Plexi, but it's hand-wired. I don't have that with me here in London, so we rented the Super Lead Plexi. And I like it because it's a very simple amp. It's loud, which is important. And it's very percussive, which is also important for me because I play with my fingers. So I need an amp that responds. If I play hard, I want it to be louder. If I play soft, I want it to be quiet. And this amp does that very, very, very well. And that's why I gravitate towards these. I've run them many different ways. I used to jump the channels and use both master volumes. But lately I'm finding I'm getting a better sound just by plugging into the second channel, the top input, which I believe is a little louder than the bottom input. And I'm running the treble, the middle, and the bass all the way up. Presence is about halfway. And then the volume, it just depends on the room. When I get to the overdrive pedal I'm using, I'll talk about that, but because of that overdrive pedal I'm using, I can actually have this amp relatively low and still get a good aggressive overdrive. Normally, these amps, to get the overdrive, you crank them, which I do in a larger room. But because of the overdrive pedal we designed, I'm able to get the sound I want and not have to drive the amp quite as hard as I used to. As for the speakers, I'm using the 30-watt Celestions. I like them more than the 70-watt because they have a smaller cone, and somehow that changes the sound. I remember years ago I A-B'd cabinets, and I went through the 25-watt speakers, the 30s, and the 70s, and for whatever reason, I preferred the 30s. I don't even remember why, but that's what I always ask for when I don't have my own rig. And that's it for the guitar amp. And so now I'll talk about the pedals I'm using. Years ago, I had this idea to take an overdrive and a delay pedal and put it in one box because I was doing a lot of traveling, a lot of fly dates where I'm in and out. I didn't want to have to deal with cables, so I made this black box that had 2 switches that controlled the reverb and tremolo on my amp, another 2 switches for the delay, another 2 switches for the overdrive. And all the components were inside one unit, hardwired together, and it was very convenient. So I teamed up with Tech 21, and we found a way to make this in a much more professional and efficient way, more reliable. And it's called the Fly Rig. And this particular Fly Rig is my personal signature model that we spent about 6 months working on to try to get the voicing correct for the distortion. Now if you look at it, you see there's 5 buttons here. I'll deal with the overdrive first. First, the button that I'm pressing now turns the overdrive on and off. So you have the level, tone, and drive control. Tone control works pretty much like the tone control on a guitar, where you're actually removing the treble. So we voiced it so that when it was somewhere around the middle, it sounded like what I wanted it to sound like. So now you have the option to add or subtract treble. It also has a boost function that you can use with the initial stage or without. So that gives you another option. So for example, you can set this to be your aggressive tone with the volume full out on the guitar. You can do solos. And if you need a little more to push over the edge, you can turn that on. Or you can do the opposite. You can leave this on and boost the amp and set this for a different kind of distortion. So it's a pretty flexible situation. Over here is the delay. The one I'm hitting now turns the delay on and off. And then on the left you have a tap tempo, which I use all the time. You set the tempo of the song once the drum starts, or if I start it, and that way I can have the delay be in time with what I'm playing. If you notice here too, there's also a drift control. If you turn that on, it'll give you a slight chorusing effect. So you can use that at your discretion. And then in the middle, the company Tech 21 invented the Sans amp, so we decided to put a Sans amp in here as an extra option. Even if you don't use the Sans amp and you set it to neutral, it still has a reverb circuit, so you can use this middle switch as a reverb, which I do. Or if you're doing a fly date where you're coming in and you're on an amp that isn't what you normally would play through, the Sans amp can be used to change the voicing of the amp to your liking. So it's a very versatile pedal. And then the final thing we did, this modification will not be on the production model, it's just something we did for mine. We added phantom power. So when you plug in a stereo 1/4-inch cable, you obviously have your audio going through there, but at the same time it's sending DC voltage to the wah. So the wah is seeing power from this. So it really is a simple rig. Now to make that happen, you have to modify the wah and you modify the pedal, but once you do that, you don't need a battery in the wah pedal or an adapter. It sees power from the Fly Rig. And the wah, the last thing I'll talk about, that's a standard Dunlop classic wah. No extra boost or any kind of voicing, potentiometers, straight wah. And that's my rig.